Good morning and welcome to the Point. It's been another very busy week in politics here in Michigan. A few months ago, when the primary date was set for the presidential nomination here in the state, some people said, well, that means Michigan's not going to get much attention right after Super Tuesday and before the winner-take-all races. That has proven not to be the case. 40-plus campaign visits later, we're still seeing a big circulation of candidates, including two major competitors this past week. First, Marco Rubio in Kentwood talked with us about his campaign and his hopes. Senator, you say you can unite this party. I have been flooded with endorsements for your candidacy this week. That's good news for you, but you know what your opponents, Mr. Trump and Senator Cruz, are going to say. Yep, he's the establishment guy, and in this race, that's not always the best place to be. How do you counter that?
Well, first of all, I never would have even been in this race had it been for the establishment. They were against me when I ran for Senate. They were against me when I started this campaign. I've had $40 million of establishment money used against me in negative ads, and yet we're still standing. I think what you see happening is something different. What you see now is a Republican Party across the political spectrum that's saying we have to win this election, and we want to rally behind the person that gives us the best chance to win, and that's me. I can unite this party. We can't win if we're not united, and this week proves that I can unite this party, and I will also grow this party, and that's why we're going to win in November as well.
On immigration, what is your position on the people who are in this country illegally today? What, as president, would you do, and what would you do about further immigration?
Well, my position is we can't even deal with that issue until we first secure our border. And once we've secured our border, we'll go to the American people and see what they're willing to support. It won't be amnesty. We're also not going to use militaristic tactics to round up and deport 12 or 13 million people. I think the American people will be very reasonable and responsible about how do you deal with someone who's been here for a long time and isn't a dangerous criminal. If they're a criminal, they're going to be deported. If they're sanctuary cities, are going to lose their federal funding. So there's a way forward on that, but only after we secure our border first and prove to the American people that the border is secured.
Do the American people care if Republicans either block or do not take action on a Supreme Court justice before this election?
To me, that issue is above politics. For me, it's about the future of the court and, quite frankly, the future of the Constitution. And we have a tradition in the Senate. It's 80 years old. I agree with Joe Biden when he talked about that tradition. He said in 1992 that we should not move forward on a nomination by George H.W. Bush because we shouldn't be moving nominations during presidential election years. Well, I agree with Joe Biden from 1992. We should wait until this election is over and allow the new president to make that appointment.
When you got into this presidential race, did you expect the Trump factor to be what it is, and has that negatively impacted the Republican race from your perspective?
No, I don't. I think it's made it more competitive, and the more competitive a race is, the better our nominee and the stronger our nominee is going to be. I think you learn from being tested. I think you grow stronger from being tested. The bottom line is Donald Trump has the support of about 25 to 30% of the Republican Party. That means 70% of Republicans are locked in against him. And right now, that's divided up among 4 people. When that gets down to 2 people or 1 person, he'll lose the nomination, and the sooner the better. And so I believe I'm the candidate that can unite the majority of the Republican Party and grow it and win in November.
I don't have the advantage of being on the road with you, so you tell me. You saw this crowd here tonight. It was bigger than I anticipated. Is this the kind of response you've been getting around the country?
Sure, we had over 4,000 people in Tennessee on Sunday. We've had big crowds where we've gone, and that's good. That means there's moving and growing enthusiasm. What I'm really excited about is how many young people were here. We were in Minnesota earlier today. I'd say probably half the crowd was under the age of 30. That's what I mean by growing the party, and I felt that here again tonight. These are very excited people. They're motivated because they know what's at stake, and they know that if I'm our nominee, I will grow this party, I will unite it, and we'll win.
The president said today that Guantanamo Bay was going to go away. You say that's a bad idea.
It is a terrible idea. First of all, the people he's releasing from Guantanamo are rejoining the fight against America. Just today, Spanish police arrested a former Guantanamo detainee who had rejoined terrorism. So it's a terrible idea. When I'm president, we're not just going to keep Guantanamo. If we get our hands on terrorists, they're going to Guantanamo.
When you look at all that needs to be done in this country, you wrapped up your speech by talking about the greatness of America that you experienced, that your parents experienced when they immigrated here. You talked about that being possible again. How do you do that?
I think you do it by re-embracing the principles that made us great in the first place. A limited government that's federal, a limited federal government that isn't involved in every aspect of our lives. Re-embracing free enterprise, which is what creates economic growth and the jobs that allow people to be better off. And a strong national security that keeps us safe, and the values that made America strong. And those values you find in the home and in the community, not through government action. We re-embrace those things, we're going to be greater than we've ever been.
I've got 30 seconds left. Tell me what has surprised you most about this run for president, because it is a unique experience.
Well, I don't know if it surprises me, but it uplifts me to see that the American people still believe the future can be better. As I said in there, America's not a government, it's a people. Our people are still pretty good. We just are great. Our people are great, but we have a bad president. We're going to fix that in 2016.
Later in the week, it was Democrat Bernie Sanders who was in Flint to hold an unusual campaign event. He had a town hall type meeting. He didn't really give a speech, but instead listened to the people of Flint, their concerns and frustrations. Here's part of what he did have to say.
We do a lot of political rallies all over this country. In fact, this morning we were in Cleveland. We did a great rally. This is not a rally. This is an opportunity for all of us together. We're going to open it up for discussion to the audience after we hear from the panel to talk about not only one of the more serious public health crises in the modern history of this country, but I think, as Deb Conrad pointed out, how could it happen? Danielle mentioned to you that I met about 9 days ago in Detroit with a number of folks from this community. And I have to tell you, when you're a United States Senator, you go to a lot of meetings and you meet with a lot of people and you see a lot of tragedy. I will never forget that meeting. It really stunned me. It was hard for me. We had a rally a little while later to talk to the rally, because what I heard at that meeting, it was almost impossible for me to believe that I was listening to people in the United States of America in the year 2016. And what I heard, and my wife Jane is with me, and she was at the meeting as well. We have 7 beautiful grandchildren, and to hear what is happening to the children in this community is so horrific, is so painful, it is almost hard to discuss. But that's what we're going to do today, because I think that unless we have the courage to look at the truth, unless we have the courage to face reality, it is hard for us as a community or as a nation to go forward. So what I would like to do is to ask our panelists and all of you to, first of all, ascertain what is going on today. We hear a whole lot. Has the response been adequate? I suspect it has not. But I want to hear what is going on today. One of the things that's kind of blown me away, and I just mentioned it to some of our panelists, is I pay in Burlington, Vermont, we pay about $70 a month for pretty good water. I hadn't realized that the cost of poison water is quite as expensive as it is here in Flint. So am I right? I mean, are people here paying $150 a month or more for water? Why are you paying for the privilege of having poisoned water? All right. I mean, we'll discuss that in a while, but I don't know that people should be paying to have water that makes them sick. Clearly, I think, and I speak as a former mayor, the immediate task is to address the crisis and do whatever we can to ameliorate it. Obviously, longer term, we need a lot more. We need to rebuild the infrastructure here in Flint. And let me just say this, that if there is anything positive, if there's any silver lining out of this tragedy, it is my hope that the American people will look at Flint and say, never again can we allow a community to undergo this. And while Flint may be the canary in the coal mine, there are a lot of other canaries all over this country. The truth is, our infrastructure is collapsing in many, many respects. You're seeing it most strongly here in Flint. And I think, as Deb Conrad made the point, that we can go there or not, that's your choice, but I'd like to stay more focused on Flint. Clearly, this is part of a long-term trend of massive levels of income and wealth inequality, of starving communities of color, of not providing the kind of resources that we need to our children, of more worry about tax breaks for billionaires than decent schools or decent infrastructure. So what's happening here is an example of national and state politics that are happening all over this country. So let me just thank all of our panelists, and we'll begin the discussion. And after the panelists are through, and we'll open it up to your questions and comments. But once again, thank you very much for being here. Now, and I once again hope that out of the tragedy of what the residents of Flint are experiencing today will come fundamental changes in national public policy regarding cities and towns all over this country.
With those brief remarks, Sanders then spent the next hour listening to residents of Flint voice their concerns about the situation there.
The citizens here have said we've had enough.
What I want to see, what I think the community wants to see, is accountability.
I think this problem goes further than just Flint.
They tell us we can't shower and bath, and you charge us for death. You're charging us to drink death.
Then he concluded with this.
Thank you for your courage. There are a lot of people, when faced with this horrific situation, would have kind of cleared out of town or given up. You are fighting back, and I applaud you for doing that. What we have got to do is not only rebuild Flint, but we have, as a nation, got to get our priorities right. What is stunning, if we were a poor country, a desperately poor country, maybe we could understand this. This is the richest country in the history of the world. And you have people out there talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the top 0.2%, but apparently we cannot adequately fund cities and towns throughout America. All right. Flint can be a leader, and that's what you're doing in changing national priorities and saying that every city and every town in this country is entitled to a strong infrastructure, good health care, good educational opportunities for their kids, a good environment. If we get our priorities right, that's what we've got to do. Thank you all very much for coming out.
Super Tuesday comes up in just a couple of days, and both of these candidates and all of the others will be looking for some type of traction out of that Big 12 state primary. Then it's back to Michigan. We'll continue to follow them and keep you updated, and we're back with more To the Point in just a moment. Welcome back to the Point. Brandon Dillon is the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party and a former member of the State House of Representatives. We talked with him about the upcoming Michigan presidential primary and the current state of politics in the state. Let's talk about the Michigan primary that's coming up. Some people told me when this date was first selected, Michigan's not going to be that big a deal because of where it is between Super Tuesday and the winner take all. Well, it's turned out to be quite a deal, and a lot of candidates are paying a lot of attention to the state. How big is this from your perspective as the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party?
Well, first of all, I think it's great. I don't think anybody thought Michigan was going to be a big state for determining either side's nominee, as you said, because of its positioning between Super Tuesday and then the winner-take-all states. But certainly that's not the case, and both sides are investing heavily in Michigan. On the Democratic side, both the Sanders and Clinton campaign have staff, offices all over the state. They're up on TV and cable and out there with their surrogates talking about issues relating to Michigan. And I know, for instance, like John Kasich has offices set up in Michigan, and I think it's going to be a state that is going to play a big role this year, and that's good for the state of Michigan. We have issues that are unique, just like Iowa and New Hampshire do. Wish we could move our primary up so that we would get all that attention, but I think this is good for the state, and I think it's particularly good for Democrats because it gives us an opportunity to highlight the things that we would do differently based on the concerns that middle class and working class folks have in the state.
And when you talk about that, both Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, and the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, have both been to Flint. in talking about the specific issues there, but the broader issues of infrastructure and urban, those core urban areas where you've got a lot of blight and all of those things. All of those things play directly into some of the things that we know here in Michigan that we need to work on. So we are getting some of that focus. When it comes to Hillary Clinton, she's been in Michigan for a long time.
Right.
She's won here before. The numbers suggest she's still ahead, but Senator Sanders seems to be making a serious play, doesn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's going to be a fairly close race. I think both candidates are doing the right thing when it comes to Michigan voters and talking about issues specific to the state, particularly Flint. And I think what both candidates are doing are really highlighting the fact that Flint is emblematic of a failed kind of Republican experiment to run government like a business and put the bottom line over public health. And to that extent, I think they've both been able to gain some traction with where Michigan voters are at and what they're looking for out of a Democratic nominee. And Michigan is, it's a microcosm of the country. We've got urban, we've got rural, we've got a diverse state, we've got upper income folks, we've got lower income folks. And it's a place that if you can win in Michigan, I think you're well positioned to win anywhere in the country.
Talking about winning in Michigan, Democrats have done it for the last number of cycles. Last time a Republican even got close was when George Herbert Walker Bush won in 1988.
Right.
So for you as the party chairman, you've got that in your back pocket as a history lesson, but there's a little pressure to make sure you do it again,
right.
too. So what is the party's role other than getting the primary? But what is your role after the primary and heading into the general election?
Yeah, well, first of all, we are not taking Michigan for granted. We understand that on both sides there is a lot of anger with the status quo, and that means that our Democratic nominee is going to have to speak to the concerns that people, not just Democrats have, but Republicans and independents that are frustrated with a system that seems to be stacked against them. So that provides some unique challenges for both sides. So we don't take it for granted, but our job at the party is to make sure that we're uniting all the elements of the party, making sure that we come together after the primary and get behind the nominee, and then have that field support, making sure that we're coordinated campaigns from the top of the ticket down, and making sure we have a strong get out the vote operation. That's the main function that the party fulfills. And whether or not the election is competitive in Michigan or not, we'll still be playing a strong role in making sure that we help state house candidates, county commission candidates, as well as the candidate at the top of the ticket.
Well, the state house is an interesting situation too, because as always, that is in play. And in a presidential year, the Democrats usually show a better turnout, which bodes well for those seats that you may try to challenge.
Well, that's true. We've certainly seen in recent history that Democratic turnout in presidential years is much better than it has been in off years. One of the reasons we have total Republican control in Michigan, even though we win those presidential years, is because of the poor performance in the midterms. But this year we are excited about the opportunities for the state house. I think the kind of craziness that you're seeing on the Republican side of the debate at the presidential level, where it looks like Donald Trump is very well positioned to be the nominee, as well as the really stark examples of the failures of this administration and the Republicans in the legislature, combined with the fact that structurally a presidential year gives Democrats a turnout advantage. We think we have a very good opportunity to compete and win for the state house.
When you talk about that focus and when you talk about what's happening to Michigan because of the light of the presidential candidates and on both sides of the aisle, but Democrats are having a debate in Flint on the Sunday before the Tuesday primary. It doesn't get much closer than that. How big a deal is that?
Well, I think it's a huge deal, not just for Michigan, but I think for national Democrats to be able to see their candidates talking about an issue that is not just specific to Michigan, but it has national and international implications, the water crisis in Flint, and all the other issues that go along with that, the suspension of democracy, the idea that cutting your way to prosperity can work. I mean, the incompetence that you've seen in this administration. So, that's big on its own, but the attention it's going to bring to Michigan before the primary, as we've seen in earlier primaries and caucuses, there's a lot of voters who wait till the very end to make up their minds. So a strong performance by the candidates is going to be, I think, extremely critical to their success on the Tuesday immediately following.
When you look at where Michigan is positioned and we have the primary on the 8th, then we won't see a great deal of circulation of candidates, I suspect, until closer to the convention dates. But after that, it has always been the practice of candidates, Democrat and Republican, to come back to the state. Do those visits equate to financial help for the party? I know that elections mean a lot of money. I know you
Sure.
you must spend a lot of time on the phone with folks and talking about that. But do those kind of visits do anything for the party?
Well, what they do is they raise excitement and interest in not only the candidates, but hopefully the party as a whole, so that we can, if we're going to elect a Democratic president, our argument would be that we want to make sure that they have a team, not only in Congress, but at the state legislative level, to be able to help enact and support the agenda. So yes, it does help us quite a bit. We obviously have to have money to compete. We certainly don't have the same kind of access to resources that our friends on the Republican side have, but the more attention that's drawn to the state and the excitement around a presidential election usually helps us be able to go out and talk to people about the importance of not only investing in those candidates, but making sure we have a strong party to be able to help Democrats up and down the ticket, all the way to school board to the White House.
One of the things that I have noticed, not just anecdotally, but I'm seeing a lot of what I would consider early campaigning on the part of some congressional candidates. You've got an open seat up in the first, and I know that one of the seats over on the east side with a high-profile candidate, and one of the southern seats. How much time, effort, and hope are you putting into those congressional races?
Well, those are extremely important races for us. Tilting the balance of power in our congressional delegation, we believe, is important, so that the representatives we are sending to Washington are more reflective of where voters in the state are. It's no secret that Democrats in the last few cycles have gotten over 50% of the vote statewide, but yet we still have a 9-5 advantage, Republican to Democratic. So those seats are going to get a lot of attention, and in a modern congressional campaign, these are like mini presidential campaigns. The candidates have to be out early, raising money, talking to voters. The first congressional district is bigger than half the states in the country. It's the largest district east of the Mississippi, so there's a lot of attention that's going to need to go in there. But over in the 7th and 8th districts on the east side of the state, those are races that we think we have an opportunity to compete in and win, and they also help us with our state house races that are within those to bring attention and resources and make sure that we're getting out as many voters as possible in all the races.
When you look at this, and we've got about a minute or so left, when you look at this in the relatively short time that you've been in this position,
Seems like a lot longer.
but you've been around politics for a long time. Is there anything that surprises you about this? Because in talking with you as we do from time to time, I'm always amazed at how much you're traveling and how much you're gone. But has there been anything that has surprised you about your role as the chairman?
There's surprises every day, but generally speaking, it's much the job I thought it would be, going out, talking to Democrats, raising money, recruiting candidates, making sure that we're providing a message that holds the Republicans in charge accountable. And every day there's new adventures, but that's the beauty of the job. It's never the same from one day to the next. And we think we're just continuing to build towards November, where we're hopeful to have a really successful election day.
Is it your anticipation that if we're sitting here during the next election cycle, you'll still be the chairman of the party?
That's up for the members of the party to decide. It really depends on how we do in November. I'm hopeful that we'll do well, and then we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Our thanks to Chairman Dillon for joining us on the show, and we're back with more To the Point. Super Tuesday is just around the corner, and of course, Michigan's primary now just over a week away. Many more visits from presidential candidates are likely, and we'll follow them all over the state. Plus, the new revelations that there will be criminal charges against Todd Korsner and Cindy Gamrat, and so much more going on. I hope you'll join us every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock right here on Wood TV 8 for To the Point.